Right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations unto the Akim out here pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, peace, blessing. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is the brother Quanawad from the Arizona Great Millstone Camp. Come back at you, Lord will, with edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And we're here, man. Right? We are in the time where the prophecy of Revelations chapter 13 verse 16 on down, right, is going to come to pass. You know, where the mandatory implementation of the RFID micro C-HIP is going to be pushed upon all the people of the world, right? As we read in Revelations 3 and 10, right, it's a time that is going to try the whole world, you know. And as you see right here, I have an article I pulled up in Vietnam, or pulled up on the People's Voice.tv. It says Vietnam erases 86 million bank accounts of non-compliant citizens who refuse digital ID. And we understand that this damn devil, right, works in gradualism, right? So this is ultimately, you know, a prelude, right, to the actual mandatory implementation of the RFID micro C-HIP, right, the little rice grain, as well as the brain disc, right, which is the MOTB, right, as stated in Revelations 13 and verse 16. You know, but before I get into this article, I do want to bring out this precept right here in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, and verse 1. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am proved. And you know, we've been commanded, right, to watch, right, to be circumspect, to look around, to pay attention, you know, because that will ultimately, right, when we do these, we see all these different events that are happening and taking place, right, and we filter these events through the scriptures, and it'll allow for us to understand the times that we're in. And we understand that we are in the time, right, of the last few major prophecies to come to pass, right? We're in the end of the end. Sorry. Right, we're in the end of the end, right? The last few seconds, you know. Verse 2, it says, and the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. That's right, right? Because the whole goal is to ultimately do what? To watch, to pay attention, right? And to warn the masses, right? That's the job of the prophet, of the prophets, right? It's to ultimately, again, through the spirit and power of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, you know, through the Rachakwadash, the Holy Spirit, right, look and see, you know, what's going on in the world, and again, filter these events through the scriptures, and give the people and warn the people of the impending doom, right, as it says in Jeremiah 28 and 8, right, the prophets before me and before thee of old have prophesied against war, evil, and pestilence, man. You know, but we're approaching, right, we're in the time of war, and we're approaching evil times, you know. And this is what we're telling y'all, right? Verse 3, it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, right? An appointed time, right? It's like you setting an appointment, right? A doctor's appointment, right? And well, your appointment is scheduled for that time. Let's say from 5 to 4, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, right? And well, guess what? Your appointment is scheduled at that time, and that appointment has to take place at that time, you know? And then we're in the time where this, you know, these prophecies, right, are being fulfilled, right? It says, but at the end it shall speak, right? And it speaks, you know, via these different laws, regulations, and policies, right, being established, as well as different events that happen, you know. It says, and not lie, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry, right? And again, it's speaking loud and clear, right? As we read in the title of this article, it says Vietnam erases 86 million bank accounts of non-compliant citizens who refuse digital ID. And again, we understand that Esau wants full-fledged control, right, over the masses, right? He wants to set himself up as the Most High, right, as we read all throughout the scriptures, you know. But it says Vietnam has just erased 86 million unverified bank accounts as the nation surrenders to the globalist Great Reset, right, which ultimately was mentioned, right, by Klaus Schwab just a few years ago, man, you know, and was reiterated many times, you know, and is still, you know, ultimately being pushed, right, as you see. It says the State Bank of Vietnam, or SBV, has closed or frozen around 86 million bank accounts because the accounts lack the required biometric authentication, which was made mandatory through a government initiative, right? So it was made mandatory, right? A digital ID, right? Biometric authentication was made mandatory by the government, you know? So again, this is a step in the direction of the RFID micro CHIP being made mandatory, you know, to everyone. You know, we understand that a lot of this, you know, biometrics and whatnot, you know, are being introduced, right? BCI, brain computer interface, and so on and so forth. All these different, you know, digital, you know, how do you say it, man? You know, just biometric, you know, as it says, authentications, right? You know, needing, you know, your thumbprint, right, to open up your phone, right? Using your face to open up your phone. All these things have been in play, right, for so long, right? And they've been, you know, ultimately optional. But the point's coming, you know, the time is coming where, you know, they're not going to be optional. You know, it's going to be mandatory, right? It says, by forcing every account onto biometric rails and erasing inactive or unverified balances, the state is doing two things. It is tightening its digital grip and closing off unofficial channels that they could otherwise move money around or out. It says they are telling the public that this is about fighting scams, but actually the hidden function is to keep all financial flows within view and under control at a time when dollar scarcity risk is rising, right? So they want to be able to, again, control what people do, where people go, right? They want to have say in everything that everyone does, you know? You know, let me grab this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 4 being the point. It says, who opposes, and this is talking about Esau Edom, right? The man of sin, the son of perdition, as stated in the verse prior, you know, which this is happening right now too, right? Matter of fact, I'll start at verse 3. It says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there coming a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Esau is being revealed at an all-time high, you know, and his plan, right? Not just who he is and all the wickedness that he's done, but his plan for the future is being revealed as well, right? And we're seeing that plan, you know, ultimately being, you know, pushed, right, in all nations, right? All nations are ultimately, because, you know, Klaus Schwab, you know, said that, you know, China would be a great example to follow, right, for the U.S., you know, as far as setting up a digital system or the digital society, right? And we see that they have already set up, you know, a social credit score, right? They've already set up, you know, basically you know, digital ID and so on and so forth. They've already basically, you know, almost fully converted over to this new world order that they want, you know, and they want the rest of the world to ultimately follow China, you know, which the citizens of China you can't get away, you know, with anything, not even crossing the road late, right? They give you an allotted amount of time, you know, maybe 15 seconds, right? Let you cross at the 16th or 17th second. Hey, well, now you're getting shamed. Your picture is getting put everywhere. You know, they might even ding you, right? They're not necessarily being, you know, told, right? But they might even ding your social credit score for that, man. You know? So it's like there's, you know, the world is ultimately starting to, you know, move in that direction, right? Verse 4, it says, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. You know, and the priest Azam Wath from the Dallas camp, you know, did a lesson earlier today, you know, going in actually this morning, right, going in on Yuval Noah Harari. Like, he made a statement, you know, that basically said that, that they don't, that we don't need, a God, that God only created organic things, that we're, it's our job to create inorganic things, and it was just, you can go watch that video, man, GMS Psalms for Thought, 144K, beautiful, brother through the spirit, man, go and subscribe and be edified. But, these damn devils, they truly believe that they can be the most high, but they're just men, right? They ain't shit, they ain't shit but flesh, man. Let's go back, right? So he wants that control, right? It says a similar move has already taken place in Thailand. And here's the point. It says, be warned, this is heading to the west, right? And this is something we've been telling y'all that's coming, right? Yeah, you got, a lot of these people, right? Scriptures talk about that knowledge shall increase in the earth, right? So you got people making articles such as this one, and ultimately saying, hey, this is coming to the west, or this, that, and the third. But we've been telling you, right, beginning with our elder apostles on down, we've been telling y'all for years, right? Our elder apostles and our elder bishops, right, for decades, right? Our elders for decades, we've been telling y'all and warning y'all, man, and now it's evident, on what's coming and what's going to happen, and I'm not going to read that. I'll move on. It says, anyone wishing to function in society must surrender their biometric data to maintain a bank account. The State Bank of Vietnam, or SBV, claims that the measure was a system cleanup aimed at preventing fraud. In actuality, the measure is one step closer toward a national ID system that enables the government to control its citizens' every move, right? Esau has his scholars reading in the scriptures, and study the scriptures, and they see precepts, where the scriptures say right that, matter of fact, let me grab it. Right, Proverbs 15:3, the eyes of the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahshar in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Esau wants this, right? But he wants it on the left-hand side, right? Through this digital setup, right? This digital system, right? He wants to be like the Most High, but he can't, right? So the only way that he's able to do that is using this, this digital system that he set up to where he can tap in, right, to microphones, just like there's a system called graphite, which you can look it up. Graphite is ultimately a system in which Esau can tap into microphones, tap into your cameras, which Esau's been had that. They're just coming out with a name with it, but it's been in the play where they can tap into any kind of electronic device, man, and listen, hear, or see whatever, and locate anyone everywhere, So he's trying to be like the Most High, It says where they want to control its citizens' every move, and when you do something against the Lord will ultimately punish you. If you're wicked, the Lord's going to punish you. Well, Esau wants to have that same type of power on the left-hand side, where if you do something that he doesn't deem, good in his society, or something that's beneficial to his society that he's trying to set up, well, he wants to be able to remove you, completely get rid of you. So again, Esau's trying to set himself up as the Most High. It says this data cleansing revolution. Said this is a data cleansing revolution, said Pham Antoine, director of the payment department. While the total number of bank accounts remains 200 million by September 2025, once the legal framework is complete, all accounts without biometric data will be closed to prevent scams and fraud. After 7 years of promoting non-cash payments, we're moving toward real efficiency. And again, it's September 2025, So now they're, again, right, they're starting to close all these different accounts, that, where the customers or the people that own these bank accounts are not, they're not following, that criteria that he's ultimately laid out, punishing these people. Now they can't get into their money. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's, rioting or uproars of the people based off of this, We'll have to wait and see, right? It says Vietnam recently implemented a nationwide digital ID system called VNEID that requires both citizens and foreign residents to surrender to the matrix and permit the government to store their personal information in a centralized database. Fingerprints, facial biometric data, photographs, passports, nationality, criminal records, and even medical records will be stored in the government database. Participation is not optional, right? You don't have, an option. It's either you ultimately, follow this system, or you're going to be, basically excommunicated from society, man. Which, you can, pause the video and read the rest, of the video, which is all, or read the rest of the article, which is it's all heavy, but I'm going to just get into that Revelations 13 and verse 16. Because again, this is the time that we're in, right? Whereas Revelation 13 and verse 16, it says, and he causeth, right? And when you go into that word causeth, right? I've gone into it before, but we'll go into it again, right? You go into that word causeth in the Greek, right? Poieo, right? Strong's G 4160, right? Poieo, it says to make, right? To make a thing, right? To require, right here, it says what? To cause one to, right? To make one do something, right? To cause one to. Right. Right, to make one do something, right? So they're making you, and they're doing that by, again, right, setting up, different laws and regulations and policies. They're saying, hey, if you don't do it, then you're just not going to, because we're for your safety, we're trying to prevent your information from being exposed, or your information from being stolen, and this and the third, lying to your face. Saying that it's for this cause or for this reason, right? But in reality, it's just so they can have control, And then if you don't do it, you're going to be, again, you're going to be fucked, if you will, right? And we're going to read that, right? It says Revelation 13 and 16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a M-A-R-K in their right hand or in their foreheads. And when you go into this word, M-A-R-K, right? Which I'm spelling it, right? Because, Esau's got his algorithms. Right, Strong's G 5480, charagma, right? But it says a stamp, an imprint, and mark. It says a mark branded upon the heart, thing carved, sculpture, graven work, right? Something that's ultimately going to be put inside you, man. Right? When you go to the root word, right, it goes back to karax, which means a pale or a stick, a palisade, which is the instrument that's going to be used, to inject this device inside you, right? And then when you go into the next root word, which goes back to what? Grapho, it says to write with reference to the form of the letters, right? Right here, to write to one, right? It says by writing in a written epistle to give information, direction. So they're going to have all your information stored on this device, And this is how you're going to be able to get into your house. This is how you're going to be able to, go to your doctors and scan in for your appointment. And this is how you're going to be able to, start your car. This is how you're going to be able to basically do anything, pay for food, identify yourself when a cop pulls you over, like all these different situations, right? That we, you have to pull out your ID or, identify ourselves in any type of way, right? Now, all that is going to be, again, as it stated, right? It's all that information, even your medical records are going to be on this device, attached to this digital ID, which then is going to be put inside you, It says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the M-A-R-K or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you're not going to be able to participate in society. Right now they're saying, based off of your, your digital authentication, right? You or a biometric authentication. So you giving them, a scan of your face or a scan of your fingerprints or, however it may be, right? That's just a step in the right direction, right? The ultimate final, move, right, is going to be you needing this actual device within your body. And again, if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to participate in society, right? Jumping up to verse 15, It says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, right? Which the image is going into, it's not an actual image, right? It's going into, basically a philosophy, a way of life, if you will, really a philosophy, that's being pushed, by America through the beast, which would be NATO and the EU, right? It says that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So many, if you're not, willing to participate in society, you're going to be killed, man. Put to death, right? We saw that, to a certain degree with, the Crown Vic Royale, right? That they separated, because when you go into that word, killed, let's find it, right? Strong's G 615, apokteno, right? It says to kill in any way whatsoever, right? To destroy, to allow to perish, right? But when you go into the root word, right, it goes of separation. It says of local separation. You drop down, it says physical, it's a state of separation, right? That is of distance, right? Physical, of distance of place. So that ultimately we're separating people, right? 6 feet apart, right? Give me 6 feet, so on and so forth, right? Which it has that, that 6, right? That 666 vibration, which you read in the, the 18th verse, but it started right here with it's separation. But soon it's going to be you don't want to participate in society, you're going to actually be killed, which goes back to the actual word, right? To kill in any way whatsoever, right? To slay, This is the time that we're in, man, right? And it's a beautiful time, man. Call Lord Yahweh Shem El Shah. Things are moving, right? They're moving fast, man. And if you ain't on the right side of Yahweh Shem El Shah, you're ultimately going to be, you're screwed, man. You're gonna be screwed when this, when shit hits the fan. Because again, this is gonna hit, and it's gonna hit real soon. Soon Esau is gonna, make it to where you absolutely need this device, man. And if you don't have it, you're gonna be dead, And this is really a warning because, again, the true prophets Yahweh Shem El Shai are warning you not to take it, right? No matter the circumstance, right? Your kid's hungry, you hungry, Esau stole thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars from you, right? So now you can't pay bills, you're gonna lose your house, you're gonna lose your car, all these different things, right? That could very well happen, right? That Esau could ultimately take away from you and bribe you, right? Saying, hey, if you want all this back, right, take this, right? And we're telling you, don't take it, right? No matter how bad the situation looks, right? Because the Lord will get you, right? This is Revelation chapter 14. And it says right here, it says, doom for worshipers of the beast. That's heavy, man. Doom for worshipers of the beast. So those that don't worship the beast, yeah, you're going to be ostracized from Esau society, right? But, you ultimately avoid that punishment that's coming, as we're going to read, right? Because those that take it are going to receive this. It says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Now you think about it, alcohol. When you take alcohol just straight shot, it's rough, man. Versus you using a chaser, right? Putting it with a chaser, put some juice, right? It's easier to handle, And the Lord's saying He's gonna pour out His wrath with no chaser on those that worship, this beast in his system. It says, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Right? You're gonna eat that fire, right? Which is, in this time, it's gonna be coming by what? ICBM nuclear missiles. And it's gonna be devastation upon those that ultimately follow Esau, Edom, and his society. So again, this is a warning. Do not take the charagma no matter what. Trust and believe in Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, right? The Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and His only beloved begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. His true name is Yahweh Shai. Trust and believe in Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shai, and don't take this charagma, man. No matter what Esau tells you, no matter what Esau threatens you with, stand stiffly for the name of Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shai, and there will be a prize, there will be a reward, Lord, will you be of that number? Lord, will we all be of that number? you know. But again, this is just a warning, man. You know, ultimately wanted to bring this, bring this about. We're in these times, man. We are in these times for sure, you know. So stay prayed up, stay watching, you know, continue to trust and believe in Yahweh Shem Yahushua to the end, Lord will, right? So with that, I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak, Wadash, the belongs to the other apostles, the other bishops, the great millstone. Till next time, I see you. Shalom.